Professor Sherwood Rowland come and make the presentation to Dr. Ramanathan.
I was not tipped off to the all of the behavior that you have seen so far. It was very, very pleasant and all that, but I'm going to stay with telling you something about Ramanathan and do it rather quickly. In 40 years ago, if you asked about global warming and the greenhouse effect, it meant you were talking about carbon dioxide. But in January in 1975, that was all changed. It was changed by Dr. Ramanathan, who found that a group of molecules called chlorofluorocarbons would be much more efficient molecule for molecule than carbon dioxide in trapping the infrared radiation that's trying to escape from the Earth. And so, having announced that the CFCs would be effective for that, it raised the question to people in the scientific audience that how could CFCs, which are present at 1 part per million compared to carbon dioxide, how could they possibly compete in the global warming? Well, they compete by the fact that the CFCs, molecule for molecule, are perhaps 20,000 times as efficient as carbon dioxide. And this changed the thinking about the global warming possibilities to being not just carbon dioxide, but carbon dioxide, CFCs, nitrous oxide, and so on. But as we have come on through time, it's become evident that it is important also about materials that are particles, and, for instance, black carbon, which is soot, and the effects of these other species besides the molecules in contributing to global warming. And here again, Dr. Ramanathan has been at the center of this with a massive program on Indo-X expedition in the Indian Ocean, where they observed a brown layer that covered all of India, and which is affecting what the rainfall patterns and the storage of the rainfall in the Himalayan reservoirs and as glaciers, and that's all threatened also as part of global warming. And so I now invite Ram to come up to the podium and to accept the Tyler Prize.
Also from the city of Los Angeles and the mayor.
And now I'll invite him to give some more words of wisdom, the same as, and keeping in mind that Richard is going to get on the red eye in a tuxedo tonight.
It's you don't want to forget this.
Don't worry, Richard. My talk is just an hour long, so you can still go. It's distinguished guests, friends, and family. As an immigrant American citizen, I'm truly honored by this recognition from my adopted country. And as you can guess, of equal honor to me is the fact that Professor Sherry Rowland gave the introduction. I don't know how many of you know this. His brilliant work with Molina on the ozone layer, in my view, will forever be etched in the history of civilization of this planet. And he pretty much saved us from a near disaster. And I'm going And I wanted to acknowledge Professor Quirk. I'm certainly overloaded with dopamine, and so you should a little bit filter some of the things I say. But first, before I go to acknowledging several of my family and friends, we know that we have gone ourselves into a mess with respect to the climate change problem, with the global warming. The time to act was yesterday, but hopefully we'll at least act today. But the thing I want to point out is that you may see, discouraging messages in the media, but interestingly, there are some simple solutions, which is not going to solve all the problem, at least will get us in the right direction. The first thing I want to point out to you is there are close to 3.5 billion people in this world with no access to fossil fuel. And so they are burning everything around them just to cook. And just fixing that problem alone would buy us about 10 to 15 years. And we're not talking about trillions, which Professor Ali, very beautifully elaborated yesterday. We are talking about few billions. And we could save the Himalayan glaciers, which scientists are predicting are going to disappear in 20, 30, 40 years. So let's remember that. There are some low-hanging fruits we can go after. The problem can be solved, but the time to act is now. So given that, I just want to point out, Richard is looking worried. I just meant half an hour, not 1 hour, Richard. No, it's only 5 minutes, thank you. So, Beverly Hills is a long, long way away from my hometown in South India. And so there are several who helped me along this journey. Starting with it, first, of course, are my parents who nurtured me and prepared me well for this journey. My mother, she has endured several catastrophes in the last 10, 15 years. So I'm happy to see she is here witnessing this event. So next is, of course, my life partner, Giri, who has endured me for the last 35 years. It's not an easy task. And she placed my science as the top of her agenda, of course, next to her children. But if you like my talk yesterday, she deserves half the credit because she was the one who told me how to present science in a logical, step-by-step fashion. And I'm not joking. She reviewed each of my slides and made so many changes to it. And my 3 children come next, and it's well known I did not spend much time with them when they were growing up. And it sort of worked to my advantage, so I didn't have to discipline them. Now they've become my greatest friends, and they sustain me in bad times and good times. And the older two now have fantastic spouses, and they've become even a greater friends than my own children for me. And I want to especially thank my oldest, Nithya, who jumped into this project Surya. We were trying to, intervene in large rural areas. She jumped into it 2 years ago and has worked pretty hard, pro bono, and I think that's what I love about it. I didn't have to pay her. And she has this fever to help the environment, and I'm not sure where she gets it from. And I want to thank my great friend of last 15 years, Amrish Goel. He's also here for his advice and counseling. And one thing, before I move on to a few of my colleagues, I had a catastrophic moment in 1997 when I suffered a heart attack when I was in Washington, D.C. We know D.C. is a bad place to go, but I learned it the hard way. This brought me, by sheer luck, into contact with the famous and a very caring cardiologist, Dr. Guarneri, and her colleague, Ronnie King. They turned my life around so much that I highly recommend a minor heart attack when you're in your 50s. Just make sure Mimi Guarneri is helping you. And moving on to my colleagues, it's just a few more. My thesis advisor, Bob Sass, a remarkable teacher who was the best advisor given my temperament and style of working. Paul Crutzen, whom I befriended in the basement of NCAR during weekends and nights because both our wives would let us serve us dinner and send us back to work. And he's, as many of you know, he's at least the most creative scientist I have met. It was just sheer joy working with him, arguing with him about how human activities are, transforming the planet. Then comes Jay Fine, I know he's a dedicated program director of climate research at NSF, who is incapable of saying no to good scientific idea. So those of you, I see a lot of young faces. If you have a good scientific idea, go to Jay Fine. He's just totally lost. He has to fund you. And then now I want to start with a part of my journey, which started in 1990 at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And without any doubt, Scripps is the perfect home for my style of research, where you get an idea, you go out and measure it. You don't trust anything until you can sense it, feel it, and observe it. And I want to thank Ed Freeman, who brought me to Scripps and has been a staunch supporter of my research, my work. Charlie Kennel, next director of Scripps, who continued that support. And now our present director of Scripps, Dr. Tony Hammett, he's here, who is a great advocate. And I must say, he immediately fell in love with the idea of Surya and the black carbon, and he's just about organizing a major meeting of the European Union, China, and the US. So, and he's also a fellow traveler in the bus I take. And thank you, Scripps. Lastly, Richard, you will be able to catch a flight. I just have 3 more pages. 15 years ago, Mr. Hung Nguyen joined me to administer my project. All I have to do is describe my vision, and Hung would brilliantly implement it. And he's a great colleague, a dependable friend, and a wise counsel. I also benefited immensely from tens of students and young scientists who have gone through my lab, and I'm glad some of them are here, sitting at the table back there. Lastly, I want to thank Dr. Jörg Kuttner, who turns 100. He's still alive, doing well. He who held the world record for glider pilot during the Second World War and was the director of the Apollo moon landing program. He got me into field experiment, and as you saw from my talk yesterday, that just changed my life completely. And I can never forget Jörg's influence on me. So, colleagues, this has been a great journey, and I want to thank the Tyler Committee with all my heartfelt thanks for giving me this amazing opportunity to express my gratitude to those who helped me along. And last but not least, I want to conclude by thanking Sue Anderson. I hope you can stand up. Who she made this event memorable for me by making sure all the people who I care for are here. Thank you.